Hey everyone, this is Madeline, and I am going to do my app presentation on schizoaffective disorder. So, schizoaffective is essentially schizophrenia plus a major mood episode, which can be a manic or a major depressive episode. The primary characteristics include delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech, grossly disorganized or catatonic behavior, and negative symptoms. After assessing for the schizophrenia piece, you would then move into assessing for a major mood episode. When looking at the depressive type, just as depression, you would need 5 or more of the following symptoms, including depressed mood for most of the day, diminished interest or pleasure in all or most activities nearly every day, significant weight loss, insomnia or hyperinsomnia, psychomotor agitation or retardation, fatigue or loss of energy, feelings of worthlessness or excessive inappropriate guilt, diminished ability to think or concentrate, indecisiveness, and lastly, recurrent thoughts of death, suicidality. When looking at the bipolar type or the manic episode, you would need 3 or more of the following symptoms: inflated self-esteem or grandiosity, decreased need of sleep, more talkative than usual, flight of ideas or subjective experience that thoughts are racing, distractibility, increase in goal-directed activity or psychomotor agitation, and then excessive involvement in activities that have a high potential for painful consequences. Okay, so how will Booster Buddy help with this diagnosis? Booster Buddy will specifically help with symptoms such as depressive episodes, early psychosis, grossly disorganized behaviors, and negative symptoms. This app has a lot of features that address common depressive symptoms such as diminished interest or pleasure in activities, insomnia or hyperinsomnia, fatigue or loss of energy, and diminished ability to think or concentrate. It also addresses early psychosis with activities depending on the client's specific symptoms. It can address things such as lack of motivation, lack of sleep, voices, delusions, oversleeping, elevated mood, substance use, and even just general wellness. This app will also help with the initial motivation of clients and also working to maintain that motivation long term. It can also be a source of encouragement as you can set it up to have reminders sent from the app straight to your phone, just checking in or reminding the client to utilize the app. It will also be beneficial in managing symptoms as it tracks what coping tools helped, building a toolbox for the client that can be utilized later as needed. It also tracks medication adherence, and you can set a reminder to take your medication so that you aren't forgetting, as medication can be very important in this diagnosis. There's also daily check-ins, which track mood on a scale from good to not great to struggling or even crisis. This app will also help as it contains a journaling feature where the clients can talk about topics such as general notes, favorite quotes from the day, gratitude, successes of the day, and also notes regarding self-compassion. So here are a couple screenshots directly from the app. Basically, when you download it, it'll ask you a set of questions, kind of gauging what symptoms you typically experience. The picture on the left shows the daily check-in. As you can see, you have good, not great, struggling, or crisis. Depending which mood you pick, it'll kind of gauge what your quests are going to look like for the day. So let's say you pick good. Your quests are probably going to look like self-care quests, looking in to see if you have any appointments coming up, stuff like that. If you click something like struggling, the first quest is going to ask you which of your symptoms is most pertinent today. Once you click which one, it'll typically psychoeducate about why that could be happening, and then the rest of the quest would be designed to address that symptom that is most distressing at the moment. You can also utilize the calendar feature, which shows how your mood has been over the month. It'll also show if you took your medication for that day. And yeah, it's just a good way to kind of monitor your progress or reflect with your social worker or counselor, caseworker, how you've been doing. There's a lot of tabs at the bottom, as you can see on the far right. One of the symptoms is initiation or lack of motivation, essentially. So you can go through the library and click any of them, look at them, read them. If it's one that worked for you, the client can favorite it. And you can also create your own. So pros to Booster Buddy include that it's easily customizable. When you first download the app, it'll ask you about which symptoms you're experiencing, and then we'll use that information to customize the coping tools that'll be put into your library to look through. It's also customizable in the sense that you can add fun accessories to your Booster Buddy, which is especially engaging to the younger crowds, which is exactly what it's targeted for. It's also easily accessible as it's free in cost and does not require Wi-Fi to use. They have a crisis plan tab so that when clients are really struggling or are in crisis mode, it sends them straight to their crisis tab, which they created, which has all the information of the nearest hospital and what number that they can call if they need to seek help at that time. Another pro to the app is that it allows for self-monitoring. As mentioned before, there's a calendar feature which shows the patterns of mood throughout the month, creating the opportunity for the client and the clinician to discuss patterns that may show from the calendar. There's also a plethora of in-app coping skills that the client can look at their own pace. These coping skills are also integrated into the daily quests, which engages the client without them having to do the research on their own. Another pro is that there's a built-in journal with different tabs that the client can utilize. This is also beneficial for the therapy sessions as the client can talk about what they wrote down during the week. The last pro to the app that I noted is that it provides a lot of psychoeducation. If a client were to click that they were struggling, their first quest for the day would ask which symptoms they're struggling with, as mentioned before, and then it will describe why they could be feeling that way, and then normalize how they're feeling, and then provide coping tools that they can either do in the moment or utilize at some point during that day. Finally, the cons to Booster Buddy include that it is really only targeted to younger individuals. I would say the TAY population, so probably 24, I would say, is like the oldest age that could potentially engage with this app, which overall just limits our target audience. This app is also very repetitive, which can be mundane to some individuals, depending on their preference. There's also limited accessibility, as in it's only for English-speaking individuals, and would definitely not work for the hearing impaired, which also limits our target audience. This app also requires some level of self-awareness, I would say. So if a client is in distress but doesn't know why, then the app essentially becomes useless to them and they likely wouldn't engage in it. And a final con is that Booster Buddy is really geared towards grossly disorganized behaviors as well as negative symptoms, and also the depressive type of schizoaffective. So let's say the client is in a severe depressed state or is really showing grossly disorganized behaviors, then it's unlikely that this app would be effective for them just because they likely wouldn't want to use the app. If they're not going to be on their phone, then they definitely won't use it. And then negative symptoms such as lack of motivation, like we've mentioned. Just those symptoms could create barriers for the client to engage with the app in general.